The Mississippi night had a way of swallowing sound, but on the edge of Pike County, where the cypress trees twisted like old, arthritic fingers, even silence felt like it carried secrets. People avoided the old Murtry property, said the air around it tasted metallic, like blood or rust, depending on who you asked. The locals whispered that the place had been cursed long before the two brothers took over the land. But no curse felt as deliberate, as human, as what those men chose to do under their father's roof. When travelers passed by on the gravel road, they sometimes glimpsed the brothers standing in the porch's shadow, tall, identical in posture, their expressions carved from stone. They were men who spoke little, but whose presence made dogs whine and children look away. No one knew what went on behind their shuttered windows, only that their father had raised them in near-total isolation, teaching them lessons no schoolhouse would ever dare acknowledge. Lessons about blood. About loyalty. About what a family must sacrifice to preserve its legacy. Rumor had it that the girl arrived at dusk one autumn day, stepping out of the back of a truck like a ghost unsure of her own shape. She didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't look anyone in the eye. The driver who brought her refused the brothers' payment, insisting he wanted nothing to do with whatever was going on in that house. She was young, too young, and her resemblance to the brothers' late father was enough to make even God avert his gaze. Some said she tried to run the first night, her thin figure sprinting toward the tree line before one of the brothers caught her by the arm and whispered something that made her collapse to her knees. After that, no one heard her voice again. The county clerk, an old man with a shaking hand and a stubborn moral compass, stumbled upon the truth by accident while reviewing dusty archives in a forgotten courthouse drawer. What he read made him drop the file to the floor. He tried warning the sheriff. Tried warning the pastor. But in Mississippi, some truths are too heavy, too poisonous, too rooted in wicked blood to utter out loud. By the time anyone dared speak up, it was already too late. The brothers had made their choice. The girl had accepted her fate. And the father's legacy, the most evil one the county had ever seen, was already alive beneath those rotting floorboards, waiting to finish what he had started. The storm came the night she tried to escape. And that's when the real story began. Key point number 1 unfolds with a quiet, creeping dread, beginning the moment the county clerk opens a sealed envelope that was never meant to be disturbed. He is an old man who has spent 40 years cataloging marriage records, land deeds, estate filings, mundane paperwork that rarely stirs emotion, but this file is different. It carries an old wax seal from a judge who died decades ago, and the stamp marking it as restricted suggests it was buried for a reason. He hesitates before opening it, feeling a strange pressure in the room, as though the air thickens around him, but curiosity wins out. Inside, he finds 2 birth certificates, brittle with age and stained at the edges. The names strike him as familiar, belonging to the 2 brothers who live far beyond the town's edge on land no one visits willingly. But what makes his hands tremble is the mother's name. It's the same on both documents. And the father listed is the same man the brothers call their own. The clerk thinks at first that he's misreading the faded ink, so he adjusts his glasses, leans closer, traces the signatures with a shaking finger, and reads again. The truth hits him so hard he has to sit down. The girl the brothers married, the pale, silent young woman the truck driver dropped off late one autumn evening, is their father's daughter, conceived in a relationship the old man must have kept hidden from the entire county. The clerk realizes that means she is the brother's half-sister, a fact so horrific it makes him whisper a prayer despite not having set foot in a church in years. He remembers the gossip about the Murtry family, the strange isolation, the father's violent temper, and the rumors of a blood pact he forced his sons to honor. Suddenly, those distant whispers seem like warnings no one paid attention to. He searches the drawer for more clues, desperate to understand why the judge hid these records so long ago. He finds a note tucked between the pages, handwritten in the judge's hurried scrawl. It says only, "This must not leave this office," followed by a line crossed out so violently the paper is torn. The clerk tries to decipher it but can't, and the missing words settle in his mind like a stone. He imagines the judge discovering the truth back then, choosing silence out of fear or pity or self-preservation. He imagines the father persuading him, threatening him, or worse. The clerk feels the weight of the secret pressing on his chest, as if the old Murtry man is standing behind him even now. The knowledge fills him with a deep, suffocating dread that no matter what he does next, the damage has already been done and the family's darkness has been allowed to grow unchecked for far too long. Key point number 2 begins with the father's final hours, when the weight of everything he has done presses down on him so heavily that even his stubborn pride can no longer hold it in. He lies in a dim, musty bedroom, the curtains drawn tight even though the sun is setting outside, casting a dying orange glow through the cracks. The two brothers stand at the foot of his bed, stiff and silent, waiting for instructions the way they have since childhood. They have always obeyed him without question, shaped by a lifetime of commands barked like scripture. But now the old man's voice is barely more than a rasp, and each breath rattles in his chest as though something inside is trying to escape. 4 days he has drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering fragments of sentences that make no sense. Words like the pact and the bloodline and purity slip from his mouth in tones that are half prayer, half threat. The brothers exchange glances each time, both pretending they understand, both afraid to admit they don't. On this final night, he seems more lucid than he has in weeks, his eyes glowing with a feverish clarity. He beckons the brothers closer with a trembling hand, insisting they lean in so no one else, no neighbor, no preacher, no force beyond the walls, can overhear what he is about to say. He tells them that the family legacy is older than either of them realized. That the world outside their land has always been sick, as he calls it, filled with people who can't be trusted, people who would dilute the family's strength if allowed too close. He repeats the lessons he drilled into them since they were boys, but this time with a desperation that chills both of them. Then he speaks of the pact he forced them into, the one they never fully understood. He explains, in fits and starts, that they were chosen to continue the line exactly as he demands, that deviation from his rules would invite ruin upon all of them. His voice grows harsher as he describes the consequences of breaking their oath, insisting that the blood must stay clean, a phrase that makes even the brothers shift uncomfortably. As his breathing grows weaker, he clutches their wrists with surprising strength, pulling them closer until his cracked lips nearly brush their ears. In a hoarse whisper, he tells them that soon the girl will arrive, the girl he has kept hidden from the world, the girl whose existence ties everything together. He warns them that they must protect her, claim her, follow through on the path he laid out long before they were born. The brothers feel the room grow colder as he forces them to swear once more, binding them to a legacy steeped in fear, secrecy, and a twisted sense of purpose. Moments later his grip loosens, his eyes go empty, and the house falls silent, leaving the brothers with a vow they never chose but now cannot escape. Key point number 3 unfolds on the evening the young woman finally arrives at the Murtry property, stepping out of the back of a rusted truck as if she has been pulled from another world entirely. The sun has already slipped behind the trees, leaving the land drenched in a bruised twilight that makes every shadow seem alive. The brothers stand on the porch, silent as statues, watching her with an unreadable intensity. She moves slowly, her thin figure stiff, her hands clasped together as though she has been taught not to take up space. Her hair hangs in tangled strands around her face, and her eyes, downcast, distant, and rimmed with exhaustion, suggest she has not slept in days. There is something unsettling about her quietness, something too practiced, as if silence was not just a habit but a condition forced into her bones. The truck driver, a man with tobacco-stained fingers and nerves stretched thin, refuses to look directly at her. When one of the brothers reaches into his pocket for payment, the driver jerks back, muttering that he wants nothing from them, nothing tied to whatever they're doing on that land. His hands shake as he climbs back into his truck, peeling off before dust even settles around her feet. The sound of the engine fading into the woods leaves a hollow ache in the air, as though the world itself knows she should not be here. The girl flinches at the sudden quiet, glancing toward the dark tree line as if she's searching for another escape that doesn't exist. The older brother steps forward first, his boots crunching against the gravel. He says her name softly, but she doesn't lift her head. She stands motionless until the younger brother gently guides her toward the house with a hand on her shoulder. Even that small touch makes her tense, as if human contact is something she has learned to fear. Inside, the house is dimly lit, filled with the lingering scent of their father's illness and the oppressive weight of secrets sealed within the walls. She pauses at the threshold, her eyes finally lifting to take in the interior, but whatever she sees there makes her expression fall blank again. The brothers show her to a small room at the end of the hallway, its window nailed shut, its furniture minimal. She steps inside without a word. The younger brother places a folded blanket on the bed, and she whispers a faint, barely audible thank you, the sound so fragile it seems to vanish before reaching the doorway. When they leave her alone, the girl sits on the edge of the bed, her fingers twisting together in a slow, anxious rhythm. Outside her window, the woods sway in the wind, and she turns her head sharply, as though she hears something no one else can. In that moment, it becomes clear that she carries more than just fear, she carries knowledge, memories, or truths she has no intention of sharing. Her arrival marks the first tremor of a storm brewing within the Murtry home, a quiet disruption that will unravel every illusion the brothers cling to. Key point number 4 takes shape in the uneasy rhythm of the nights that follow the girl's arrival, when the brothers begin performing strange rituals that stir unease across the quiet Mississippi backwoods. At first, the neighbors think little of the activity on the Murtry property, dismissing it as the brothers tending to their land. But soon the pattern becomes too eerie to ignore. Each night, long after the last light in town has gone dark, the brothers can be seen carrying shovels toward the woods behind their house. Lanterns swing in their hands, their glow cutting through the trees like floating eyes. They walk with an urgent purpose, never speaking, their movements synchronized in a way that suggests they have done this many times before. Curiosity begins to seep into the minds of those who live closest to the property. A few bold souls try listening from their porches, hoping to understand what the brothers are doing. That is when they hear it, low chanting, carried faintly by the wind. The sound is rhythmic, almost ritualistic, repeating phrases no one can decipher. Some say it resembles the mutterings their father used to recite during his drunken hours, when he would stand in the backyard staring at the sky as though waiting for something to answer. Others swear the chant seems older than him, older than the house, older than the family itself. As the nights wear on, the brothers' actions grow more unsettling. They begin digging deep pits in the earth, wide enough for a grown man to lie down in. They work tirelessly, sometimes until dawn, their lanterns bobbing like restless spirits among the trees. When asked by a passing neighbor what they're digging, the younger brother replies with a cold stare and a vague remark about preparing the ground, leaving the neighbor with a chill he cannot shake. No one sees what they place inside the pits, if anything at all, but by sunrise, the earth is always packed flat again, undisturbed except for the fresh marks of the shovels. The girl notices their nightly disappearances and begins to grow uneasy, her nerves tightening with each passing hour. She hears the distant chanting from her locked room and pulls her blanket closer, as if trying to shield herself from the unknown. Once, she gathers enough courage to peek through a tiny crack in the boarded window and sees the brothers standing motionless around a lantern, their heads bowed as though praying to something neither holy nor human. She backs away quickly, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The rituals mark a shift in the energy of the house. The walls feel heavier, the air colder, and the silence inside more oppressive than ever before. Whatever the brothers believe they are doing, whatever their father taught them, it is clear they are not simply honoring a tradition. They are preparing for something. And whatever it is, the land itself seems to be holding its breath, waiting for the moment it can no longer stay buried. Key point number 5 intensifies the growing dread around the Murtry property when the county sheriff, one of the few people brave enough to confront the brothers, disappears without leaving behind a single trace. His troubles begin with a flood of complaints from nearby residents who report screams echoing through the woods late at night. Some insist the cries belong to a woman, sharp and panicked. Others think they belong to an animal, though no one can agree on what kind. One family even claims the sound came from beneath the ground itself, as though something buried were begging to be released. The sheriff, a man known for his stubborn skepticism, initially laughs off the stories, assuming the neighbors are letting old folklore get into their heads. But when the calls persist, he decides to investigate, convinced the brothers are simply trespassing boundaries or slaughtering livestock after dark. He arrives just after sundown, driving his patrol car down the gravel road until the headlights wash over the Murtry house, which stands lifeless and still, its windows blackened from within. The porch light flickers weakly, but no one steps out to greet him. As he climbs out of the car, a cold wind rushes past, carrying with it a smell he can't identify, something metallic and earthy, like soil fresh from a grave. He approaches the front door, knocking firmly, announcing his presence with the confidence of someone who believes authority still matters here. But the silence that answers him feels deliberate, thick, and watchful. He circles around the side of the house, shining his flashlight across the yard. That is when he notices the lanterns extinguished in the dirt, abandoned mid-use, their glass still warm to the touch. He also sees footprints, many of them leading toward the woods, prints too fresh to ignore. With a deep breath, he follows the trail into the trees, where shadows stretch long and distorted under the moonlight. The deeper he goes, the quieter the forest becomes. Even the insects seem to hold their breath, and the sheriff grips his flashlight tighter, sensing eyes on him though he sees no one. He reaches a clearing where the earth has been disturbed, lines of turned soil forming a pattern he cannot make sense of. Kneeling to inspect it, he notices something half buried in the dirt, a shred of cloth, pale and torn, unmistakably feminine. His instincts tell him to turn back, to call for backup, but something compels him forward, a mix of duty and curiosity pulling him into the dark. He takes one more step, then another. And then the beam of his flashlight flickers, sputters, and goes out entirely. The patrol car remains parked outside the Murtry house until sunrise. When deputies finally come searching, they find the car door open, the radio still crackling, and the sheriff's badge lying in the grass. But of the sheriff himself, there is no sign, not a drop of blood, not a footprint, not even a broken branch to suggest where he went. It is as if the woods swallowed him whole, and the brothers never acknowledge his disappearance, continuing their nightly rituals as though nothing at all has changed. Key point number 6 unfolds through the terrified eyes of a runaway teen who stumbles onto the Murtry property after days of wandering the back roads, starving, cold, and convinced that anything is better than returning home. He sees the dim light leaking from one of the Murtry house windows and mistakes it for safety, not knowing the land he's trespassing on is already rumored to swallow people whole. He approaches cautiously, his footsteps soft in the wet leaves, hoping to beg for food or warmth before continuing south. The house seems deceptively still, but something about its silence feels wrong, as if the building itself is holding its breath. When no one answers his hesitant knock, he circles around the side, searching for another entrance, unaware that he is stepping deeper into the brothers' world, where secrets grow like rot beneath the floorboards. He finds a small window cracked open at the back of the house and hoists himself inside, landing quietly on what appears to be a storage room floor. The air is thick, stale, and tinged with a smell he can't place, a mixture of damp earth and something far more unsettling. He creeps through the narrow hallway, hoping to find food or a warm place to rest for the night. But instead of comfort, he finds a heavy padlocked door at the far end of the corridor. The metal is cold when he touches it, colder than anything inside the house should be, as if whatever lies behind it drains the warmth from its surroundings. Pressing his ear to the door, he hears faint sounds, at first a soft scratching, like fingernails dragging across wood, then whispers, layered and overlapping, too many voices to belong to one person. Each whisper is fragmented, incoherent, yet undeniably human. He flinches, stumbling back, convinced someone is trapped inside. But before he can call out, another sound rises from behind the door, a slow, rhythmic thudding, spaced apart like the beating of a heart far too large to be human. He steps away, panic clawing up his throat. The house feels alive, shifting subtly under his feet, as if reacting to his intrusion. His instincts tell him to run, but curiosity, dangerous, consuming curiosity, draws him closer again. He examines the edges of the doorframe and notices deep gouges in the wood, marks that look like something tried to force its way out, not in. The realization floods him with cold dread. He imagines the missing sheriff, the nightly pits, the murmurs in the woods. Everything suddenly aligns into a shape he cannot fully understand but knows enough to fear. As he backs away, a whisper slips through the keyhole, faint yet distinct enough to freeze him in place. It says his name, though he never told a soul who lived here. It says it with a familiarity that suggests whatever is locked inside the cellar already knows him, already senses him, already wants him. The whisper is followed by silence, heavy and expectant, as though the house is waiting to see what he will do next. Key point number 7 emerges the moment the girl finally breaks her silence, revealing that she is far more aware and far more dangerous than the brothers ever imagined. For weeks she has moved through the Murtry house like a ghost, obeying their commands, whispering only when spoken to, and staring at the floor as though afraid the walls might punish her for looking up. But beneath that fragile exterior, something grows: resentment, knowledge, a sharp understanding of the roles forced upon her long before she arrived on the property. She listens to the brothers' arguments through thin walls, hears their footsteps pacing the hallways at night, and notices how their eyes linger on her not with affection or protection, but with an unnerving mix of duty and possession. She knows what they expect of her. She knows what their father demanded. And she knows the truth they think she is too meek to comprehend. Her shift begins subtly. One afternoon, while the younger brother places a tray of food in her room, he notices her watching him with a strange intensity. Not fearful, not submissive, but studying him, calculating something behind her wide, tired eyes. He asks her if she needs anything else, and for the first time she doesn't shake her head or murmur a small thank you. She simply says, "Do you ever wonder if he lied to you?" The brother freezes, unsure whether she means their father or someone else entirely. Before he can ask, she returns to her silent posture, but the question lingers in his mind long after he leaves her room. As the days pass, she grows bolder in small ways. She refuses to eat until they answer her questions. She stands in doorways longer than they expect, watching their nightly rituals with an unsettling calm. She does not scream, protest, or flee. Instead, she observes. And every time she speaks, her words strike like needles into the brothers' fragile sense of purpose. She tells them stories from before she arrived, stories of the old man who raised her in secret, the father they all share, the man who whispered to her the same twisted philosophy he drilled into them. Except he told her more. He told her things the brothers never heard, things they weren't supposed to know. She reveals that she was not brought here to be protected or cherished, but to fulfill the final step in a legacy designed long before any of them were born. Her voice becomes stronger each time she speaks, as if shedding years of silence with every revelation. She tells the brothers she knows who they are, what they've done, what they're meant to continue. She tells them she knows about the pact, the pits in the woods, the cellar. She tells them she knows their father's true intention, the one he hid even from them. And in her tone, calm, steady, almost eerily assured, there is no fear. Only certainty. She knows the future of the Murtry bloodline better than they do. And she warns them, with chilling clarity, that whatever they think they control is already slipping out of their hands. Key point number 8 erupts slowly, like pressure building beneath the floorboards until it finally forces its way out, turning the two brothers, once inseparable in loyalty and fear, into enemies circling each other with suspicion sharp enough to cut. Their father's death left them bound to a legacy neither fully understood, but for a while they clung to it together, repeating his rituals, echoing his beliefs, and convincing themselves they were honoring his final wishes. But the girl's newfound boldness, her unsettling questions, and the hints she drops about truths their father hid have begun to rot the fragile trust between them. The older brother thinks she is manipulating them, trying to turn them against each other. The younger one believes she is simply afraid and that their father indeed lied, twisting all of their lives into a shape that never should have existed. These opposing beliefs grow like rival vines, choking out every memory of unity they once had. The tension first shows itself in the way they argue about the rituals. The older brother insists they must continue everything exactly as their father demanded, refusing to deviate even slightly. He repeats the old man's words with the same stern rigidity, clinging to the rituals like lifelines. The younger brother questions them more openly now, asking why they must bury things in the woods at night, why they must keep the girl in a locked room, why they must uphold a pact neither of them remembers agreeing to. Each question feels like a betrayal to the older brother, a personal attack on the only structure he has ever known. And each refusal to answer only deepens the younger brother's doubts. Their arguments escalate quickly. What begins as whispered disagreements in the hallway transforms into shouting matches that shake the thin walls of the house. The girl listens from her room, knowing every raised voice is another crack forming in the foundation of their brotherhood. The younger brother accuses the older of hiding things, of being too afraid to question the father's madness, of secretly performing rituals without him. The older brother retaliates by accusing the younger of breaking the pact, of speaking too freely with the girl, of letting her corrupt his loyalty. Their father's presence lingers heavily in every fight, as though his ghost stands between them, whispering poison into their ears. Eventually, the brothers begin avoiding each other entirely, moving around the house like predators sharing the same territory but refusing to cross paths. The younger sleeps lightly, sensing danger in the older's silence. The older watches him with the same cold, distant stare he once reserved only for strangers trespassing on their land. Their father's legacy, meant to bind them together, instead becomes the reason they begin to fear one another. And through it all, the girl remains composed, almost serene, as though she knew this was inevitable. She understands far better than they do that a family built on secrecy and obedience cannot survive the moment someone begins to doubt. The brothers' war has begun, and neither realizes how easily their unraveling can be used against them. Key point number 9 reaches its crescendo the night the girl decides to flee, a storm rolling over the Mississippi woods like a dark, living thing, rattling the trees and slamming rain against the windows of the Murtry house. She has been planning this escape quietly for days, memorizing the rhythm of the brothers' routines, listening to the creaks in the floorboards and the whispering wind outside, timing her movements with a precision born of desperation. Her silence over the past weeks has not been fear alone but strategy, a careful patience that has allowed her to understand everything: the nightly rituals, the hidden pits, the secrets locked away in the cellar, and the bitter tension that now exists between the two brothers. Each breath she takes, each step she practices in her room, is measured, deliberate, and fueled by a determination to leave the twisted legacy behind. As the storm begins, the house seems to tremble with anticipation, the thunder echoing the beat of her own heart. She waits for the moment when the brother's attention is drawn elsewhere, when the older brother moves to inspect the grounds while the younger retreats to his room, lost in argument with himself or perhaps with ghosts of their father's influence. She slips through the door quietly, feeling the slick floorboards beneath her bare feet, the shadows stretching and twisting like living fingers across the walls. Her small body moves with a nimbleness the brothers cannot anticipate, threading through hallways and around corners with an uncanny awareness, as if she knows the house better than they do despite having arrived only weeks ago. Once outside, the storm greets her with full force. Rain lashes her face, soaking her hair and clothes, whipping her forward as if the weather itself is urging her to go faster. Lightning illuminates the woods in stark, fleeting flashes, revealing the paths the brothers have dug, the lanterns abandoned in the mud, and the earth that has already been disturbed countless times. Every flash of light reminds her of what she is leaving behind and the darkness she is running into, yet she moves forward, driven by a combination of fear and the undeniable need for freedom. The forest swallows her almost immediately, branches scraping against her skin, roots threatening to trip her, but she presses on with unwavering determination. Along the way, she discovers remnants of her father's intentions, hidden notes, symbols carved into trees, signs of a design meant to control the family across generations. Each piece she uncovers confirms that nothing about her life, nothing about the Murtry household, has ever been accidental. The father's plans were deliberate, cruel, and far-reaching, and the brothers were merely instruments of a legacy that has long been in motion. She realizes that escaping the house is only the first step. Understanding the full depth of their family's twisted designs will demand every ounce of courage she possesses. And as the storm rages around her, she begins to grasp that the secrets she has unearthed will follow her, shaping the choices she must make and the dangers she must face beyond the confines of the property. Key point number 10 unfolds in the darkness of the Murtry house, in the hidden depths of the cellar that has long been sealed off from the world. The girl, now emboldened by the storm and her desperate flight through the woods, returns not out of fear, but to confront the truth that has shadowed every step of her life. She finds the key hidden in a place the brothers assume she cannot reach, a simple, corroded metal object tucked behind a loose floorboard, and with hands trembling from both adrenaline and cold, she fits it into the lock. The heavy door groans as it opens, releasing a stale, damp odor that carries with it centuries of secrecy. The air inside is thick, suffocating, charged with something alive yet unseen, as though the house itself has been waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to enter. Inside the cellar, the walls are lined with symbols scratched into the wood, faded but deliberate, and the floor is littered with objects that feel ritualistic in nature: bones, broken tools, and containers of unknown substances that give off a faint metallic tang. At first, the girl hesitates, scanning the shadows for any sign of life, her pulse hammering in her ears louder than the storm outside. And then she sees it, A ledger, bound in leather, filled with meticulous records spanning decades. It documents births, marriages, disappearances, and deaths, each entry marked with careful attention to lineage, to the continuation of the Murtry bloodline, and to the rituals that bind it all together. She realizes, with a chill that courses from her toes to her skull, that the brothers' actions, their nightly excavations, their whispered chants, their rigid obedience were not isolated acts of madness, but parts of a plan so extensive it spans generations. As she flips through the ledger, the full weight of the family's history presses down on her. She sees evidence of deliberate manipulation, hidden pregnancies, and the careful orchestration of events designed to maintain a pure line. The father's influence extends far beyond his death, his will embedded into every stone of the house, every dug pit, every silence forced upon those who entered his orbit. The ledger shows that the brothers were never free, never truly capable of rebellion. They were puppets, bound from birth by vows and fear, their lives predetermined in service to a legacy that is both malignant and unrelenting. She understands now that the evil she faces is not merely personal or isolated, it is structural, deeply rooted, and unstoppable in the absence of intervention. Every detail the ledger contains points to the same truth: the family's curse is real, and the events set in motion long before she or the brothers were born cannot be undone by courage alone. The girl's mind races as she processes the scope of what she has uncovered. The cellar itself seems alive with the murmurs of past generations, whispering the dark intentions of men who have long since died, yet whose influence lingers as a chain around her and the brothers. In that moment, she comprehends the full, horrifying breadth of the Murtry family's legacy, the evil that shaped their lives, dictated their actions, and now threatens to consume them all.